Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Finance and Corporate Services Committee. As everyone's probably noticed, we have an entirely new system here. I want to begin by thanking our clerk staff and folks behind us for the amazing new setup here. It's going to be a bit of a learning curve, though, today, folks, so just a little bit of patience to be appreciated, as we were warned in email. Just before we get into it as well, the only thing that I can think of that I need to advise everyone of at this moment is when voting, just like a regular those in favor, those opposed voting, if you could just hold your hand up clearly for like a second for each of them for whether you're for or opposed, because we want to make sure we capture it on the camera for the official record, okay? So with that, I'll begin by asking if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Not seeing any, we will move on to the consent items. We do have a delegate for consent item 3.3, the noise exemption for construction. So I'll take a mover for all of the consent items except for that. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any comments or questions on anything but 3.3? Not seeing any. Those in favor? And opposed? None opposed. Sorry?
We're doing it a different way with our mics on, and then we put our hands up.
No, it was done properly. Yeah, we're good. It's only my mic has to be off.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to exaggerate the vote, that's better. Yeah, especially if you're enthusiastic. All right. Now for the final consent item 3.3, I do understand we have a delegate, Catherine McCutcheon from Vanmar.
Yes, I'm here.
When you're ready.
I can start anytime.
Please.
Okay. So yes, I'm Catherine from Vanmar. Thank you so much for having me today. This is my first time speaking at council, so bear with me. I do want to say thank you for reviewing the staff's report, for why we're justifying why we would like the exemption to be approved. I can definitely understand the complexity and heaviness of a substantial ask such as this. I do want to share that Vanmar is a very prominent and trusted builder within our own community for over 40 years, and very much focused on community. One of the main reasons why we're requesting the noise bylaw exemption to start 1 hour earlier is aligned with your goals to build faster without compromising our quality, and not to build faster by a landslide, but to ultimately have homes built faster for our community at a reasonable rate. I wanted to speak to the pandemic allowance. It definitely isn't a precedent that we want to set. We haven't asked to start at 6 a.m. for the entire duration of our project. We've actually already been under construction for over 17 months, and we have a long way to go. Our request is specifically for expediting the tower element of the building, which is the request covering the next 7 months for us. If the exemption is approved, this building can be occupied up to 2 months earlier, which means we'll be off the site producing no noise, which is substantial to the surrounding residents and will allow individuals and families to move in quicker. We always talk about like how we can be more productive and get families in housing, and our resolution was listening to our community that builds these buildings. We have a really good relationship with our trades in the surrounding community, and our trades come from all over Southern Ontario, even locally. And if we can have our staff working a full day starting at 6 a.m. with most unionized trades ending their workday by 3, why wouldn't we entertain it? After all, they are helping us find our common goal, which is building houses for our community. With this exemption, we can have our teams head to and from work without sitting in traffic jams, supporting our goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Although it's not substantial, it is something positive to consider. We understand the length of our request is substantial at 7 months, which is why we've engaged Englobe to monitor the noise on site for a 2-week period running 24 hours a day. And although our peak construction noise levels are very standard, one of the loudest noises by far is actually the train horns coming from the railway. and sometimes right at 6 a.m., which is far surpassing any of our construction noise levels throughout the duration of our monitoring. One of the items is our hoist, which runs up and down the building. It is a bit noisy, in all honesty. In a typical hour, we would run the hoist about 10 times. However, between the hours of 6 and 7, we would only suggest that we operate at 2 to 3 times potentially. And this is just to get people up and working in the buildings. We've also considered the activities that we would be allowing on site between 6 and 7, which would consist of people arriving on site, startup meetings, delivery of materials, distribution, placing and tying rebar, moving formwork, other activities related to formwork, and then any work that can be done internal to the building that would be considered on a concealed floor. So that would be any floor that has windows and doors installed. We wouldn't allow any jackhammering, hammering, any gas-powered equipment to operate, no saws or concrete chipping. We would be very considerate of any loud noises between the hours of 6 and 7 a.m. And we're willing to work with staff as well on any acceptable activities moving forward. We did draft a letter for the surrounding residents as well. So this would be anyone residing in Station Park Phase 1, as well as residents on Wellington Street and Walter Street, and to allow open lines of communication with us. So if there is any issues, we would be happy to modify what we're doing on site accordingly. I do want to say thank you. Again, I know this is a substantial request, but we really do want to show that we love our community and we love the projects that we build. And we do want to be very considerate about what we're doing on site between the hours of 6 and 7 a.m. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. That was exactly on time. So I have a number of committee members that are queued in for, this is questions of the delegate at this point. So if your question is not for the delegate, then if you could please queue out. First up is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you.
Councillor Ioannidis, your microphone.
Can you hear me? Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Chair Davey, and thank you, thank you for coming in and for your presentation. I'm sorry I couldn't hear too much of your. We were having a bit of audio issues, and I also have a bit of a hearing problem. So please forgive me if this question was already addressed in your comments. How long do you feel, if this was this 1 hour, that it would speed up the entire process by?
So we're hoping to be wrapped up 2 months earlier.
2 months earlier, okay. And have the residents that are currently living in the development, have they expressed concerns to your firm about whether they've had issues with noise at all?
We haven't had a lot. I know there was one about a month and a half ago that we were aware of. We're in touch with our construction staff quite regularly. I've also reached out to the building concierge and property management company at Station Park, and they haven't received any issues or complaints over the last month and a half. Okay,
so would they receive any complaints from the neighboring residences at all?
So probably nobody on Wellington Street and Walter Street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thanks very much for coming in, Ms. McCutcheon. So my question is, I'm wondering if you have reached out at all to the neighbors. Is that something that you did put out any flyers or any door knocking or anything at all?
No, we haven't yet, but we plan to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I actually had a similar question to Councillor Johnson. And so when you do contact the community around the proposed bylaw amendment, what radius are you going to contact? Like, are you 2 streets over, 3, a kilometer?
So the intersection that's closest to our site, so the development we've already constructed, so Station Park Phase 1, so that's Tower A and B. And then for all the houses along Wellington Street, and then all like the houses along Walter Street to the next intersection was where we were gonna canvass.
Okay, and so you haven't contacted any of the residents around that area, right? That's what you said to Ms. Johnson?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, and so when are you anticipating, if this is approved, starting the earlier days?
So we were requesting October 1st.
Okay. Okay, and so that's in what, 3 weeks? 2 weeks, so you would have a 2-week lead up to advise them that this was coming forward? Okay. And how many of your workers come from out of town?
I don't know the number exactly, but I can get some further information on that. I know like they come from all over.
I'm sorry?
They come from all over, like Southern Ontario. There's some local companies and trades as well.
Okay, and how long has this specific development been going on? Did you say 17 months?
Correct, yeah.
And so I'm just curious why a request hasn't come forward to expedite the process before now. Like, what's the urgency now as opposed to 6 months ago, and not asking for the early start time?
I think it's because we were trying to put a plan in place to see if there was a way we could expedite construction. Now that we're onto a typical floor plate of the tower, it's the same every single level. So if we're able to expedite that by adding an extra hour in the day, that's kind of where we ended up. Over the last couple months, we've kind of figured out maybe this is a possibility that we could entertain. So we are on level 21 right now. We've got up to 36 to go, but yeah, it's just come about over the last couple months to see if this is something we could entertain to build it quicker.
Okay, and for my last question, it would delay the project by 2 months if we were to say no today, or around there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, correct, 2 months.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Up next is Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Catherine, for answering those questions of colleagues, because it does give some perspective of the lead of work that's happened on the site. In my time, I'm going to try to get more perspective. Some answers I do know, but I think it's important to those watching and for the public to get a sense of understanding of why the necessity of the ask. One of the questions asked earlier was, well, why didn't you ask for the 2 towers before? The 2 towers that have already been built, they're along adjacent corner to Wellington and King.
Correct.
So Tower C, I mean, if you have this information by hand, there is a schematic that shows that it's set into the rear side of the property, closest to the rail tracks, furthest away from both Wellington as well as King Street. Do you know by meters how far this tower is?
How tall?
How many meters away this tower is away from both the low-rise neighborhood that's adjacent to Wellington, and then further down on King Street and Wellington, where there's some additional low-rise residences too, just to get a perspective of how far back this tower is really set.
Okay, so we are about 100 meters from King Street. And to the closest house on Wellington Street, we're about 75 meters.
Okay, so 100 meters and 75 meters, that's to Wellington, when that's lesser residences there than the other side of King Street. Okay, that helps a lot to give both committee members some perspective of, the buffer and the separation of this tower and the noise that would be permeating from here to the low-rise neighborhoods. Additionally, is this the first project that Banmar has done? Can you reference any others that you guys have done in recent times?
Sure. So Station Park has been a big piece of our portfolio lately, but we've done Moda in Waterloo, in Kitchener. I don't know if there's any others specifically. The Jake also in Waterloo, which is like Northfield area.
So this is the first big gamble in Kitchener that you guys are doing? The first one that you're doing in Kitchener as a project?
Well, we finished phase 1, so that was our project as well.
Right, but Station Park is the first project, okay. No, that helps me to know that you guys, the experience of knowing how to manage the site is new to you, so, and the 2 months, your report was fairly thorough, the fact that 2 months of saving. Now, when you can finish the project site 2 months faster, as a pro forma for a developer, what does that necessarily mean to you? I'm sure it would be good for the neighborhood, the fact that construction would be wrapped up faster, so the noise that's going throughout the day is 2 months done earlier. But as opposed to the pro forma, what kind of savings would a developer look at?
I'm not sure what it would be exactly. I know there is some savings to the developer, but the exact number, I'm not sure.
No, is the savings on the cranes? Are they really large tangible items that you can really, pinpoint on where the saving comes back to the pro forma so that you guys, these sites work, and at the end of the day, I'll shift from the question with my remaining time because I think it goes into too much nuance about, the dollars and cents. With the Tower C finishing up 2 months faster, how quickly could some of the amenities be available? Because again, as the site is building up, because multi-towers, some of the amenities would be available at the latest part of the completion of the project. Would that be, would additional amenities be online faster for the additional 2 towers that are already built right now? That was probably a more pertinent question.
Yeah, so the construction of everything we want to complete in Building C would be completed by, I think it's June or July 2025. So, like us having this hour extra, having the extra 2 months, we actually would be able to finish those spaces for amenities.
So there would be amenities available for the summer of next year because of the extra 2 months. Okay, that helps me to understand it. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 2 people left in the queue. And sorry, just as a heads up too, if you're hearing that jingling noise, that's an indication that there's 30 seconds left in your allotted time. Up next is Mayor Hrbanovic.
Thank you very much, Chair Davey, and thanks, Ms. McCutcheon, for coming in today. I guess my question to you is, well, twofold. Number one, you referenced a number of other projects that you've built, both in Kitchener and Waterloo and elsewhere, and you've been able to work within the 7 a.m. start time frame. What has changed that would require you to be considered for this exemption, and not just for a short period of time, which we have from time to time granted to other applicants, but in fact are looking for this for 7 months? What's different that's requiring you to do that?
I think because the height of the towers are so tall, it gives us an opportunity to be more efficient in how we're building. So we're looking at things differently. There's different pressures, especially when we're working with unionized trades, that don't make us the most productive. So if we're able to shift our schedule to more align with their schedules, it actually does help us be more efficient on site and more productive, which is what we all strive to aim for. So for us, it's all about productivity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess my second question to you is, I've heard from a number of people, as I imagine other members of council have over the weekend, who have real concerns around this and how this will impact their quality of life, not just for a short period of time, but for 7 months. I mean, you know, what do we say to those people who have legitimate concerns, in my view?
I would say I totally understand because I'm also a resident of the area and I get it. It's not the most ideal. The two benefits I would say are if we're starting earlier on site, we're leaving earlier at the end of the day. So if our teams are off site by 4 p.m., there's the rest of the evening that we're not present. And I mean, if we can avoid working on Saturdays, I mean, we don't want to have to do that either. So if we can utilize our time during the work week, I think that would be ideal. But I get it, like it is inconvenient, but I think we're being the most considerate with the activities that we're planning to proceed with on site as well. We want to be considerate about the neighboring community and the surrounding residents. Like, we don't want it to be a hindrance. We do want to consider all of our activities on site. So we are restricting certain activities that our trades are allowed to do between the hours of 6 and 7. And hopefully that's enough.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, I do have some questions of staff at the appropriate time as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Still two in the queue for questions of the delegate. Next up is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. I just wanted clarification on the duration of the project. Like you said, June or July of 2025, that's just for this one building, is that correct? Because there's still another building to be had, right? So, I mean, that could go on for another 2-3 years, I presume.
Sorry, let me clarify. There is another building coming, but probably not to be constructed for like 3 years, 2 to 3 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon, for answering all these questions. I'm going back to the public engagement piece. In my understanding from what you said is that you will notify the residents of the early start time, but there hasn't been any communication with them until now, or before that. Like you haven't reached out to anybody in the community and kind of gauged where what they would feel like this for this. You're just going to tell them that this is a start time if this gets approved. Is that the plan?
Yes, so we would like to deliver notices to the surrounding neighborhood, but we also want to keep an open line of communication with the neighboring community as well. Like if there are any issues, we do want them to reach out to us and raise any concerns, because I know our Vanmar construction staff, they're open and willing to make adjustments as required.
So I'm wondering if you would consider if there was a deferral on this and waiting until after you engage with the community to see what the reception is with the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhoods, before council approved this.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. There are no further questions from committee. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. We will now take questions of staff if members of committee would like to queue in. Up first is Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Chair Davey. I guess my question is, Gloria, in the report it said during the pandemic we received quite a bit of noise complaints during the time. Do we have a specific data that shows when those complaints were being issued? Like, because if I'm looking at this is going to be ready for the winter months, and I feel like you're not going to hear the same noise. But again, I'm not living in the neighborhood and I don't know the statistics, so.
Ms. McNeil? Go ahead.
Through the chair. So during the pandemic, I did pull the stats on it. I wasn't able to get into the fine details of that. We just simply had codified it as construction-related noise for either early start or late. So at that time, the province had provided relief to developers so they could work between 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. So it was either that they were working too late or they were working too early. And that was, the bulk of them was for the early start times.
Okay, so this exemption's only only asking to be 1 hour earlier. What's the official time for the noise exemption normally when it's like at the end of the day? Is it 11? Like,
Through the chair, the times allowable in the noise bylaw are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for construction-related noise.
okay, so, okay. I mean, it would have been nice to have a little bit better data, but anyways, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you, Chair Davy. Ms. McNeil, my question wants to look back on this 7 to 7 timeframe that's been in place. Do you have any sense, like my recollection is this has been in place for many years, if not decades or already. Do you have a sense of how long that's been in place?
Through the chair, I'm going to age myself right now, but I did noise in 1996 and it was in place then.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's been my recollection that it's been around for at least that time period as well. And so I'd like to think that it's probably been in place for good reason based on experience in the community and the kind of complaints that we have. I guess the other question that I would have for you is this the kind of noise complaint that we've seen only happen with this kind of condo development, or in fact, do we get noise complaints about early starts and late finishes throughout the city? In other words, not just in the urban part of the city, but in suburbia as well.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. Like we do receive complaints about early starts and late finishes throughout the entire city.
Okay, and then the last question I have, and you allude to it in the report, and I understand, you know, there are sometimes particular circumstances that need to be considered, you know, particularly, you know, that require a short-term period. But do we run a risk of, if we grant this exemption, that in fact any constructor, whether it's a condo, single-family homes, townhomes, anything, can say, particularly in the summer months, you know, I can do better if we start at 6 in the morning. I can get more done. You know, we can work longer because the sun's up and so on. Will we potentially, you know, find ourselves in a situation where we're going to get numerous requests going forward, and we'll be hard pressed to say no to others if we grant this exemption on a regular basis?
Through the chair, I believe that is staff's concern, is that if we permit this developer to have an early start time, that we may be setting a precedent for other developers to come forward and make the same ask. We always do our best to work with developers and construction companies, and if there is a requirement for an early start for a short duration, we've often done them over a couple of days for concrete pours. We're certainly accommodating to those requests. But given the span of how long they're asking for, and we have had some complaints related to this site for early start times already, I would be concerned that we may be setting a precedent for others.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And those are my concerns as well. Thank you very much for answering those questions.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Davy, and thank you for the questions, Mayor. So if I understand correctly, you've already had concerns, bylaws already had concerns about them starting earlier. So would you say, and I think you already said so, is there a potential they could start even earlier than the 6 o'clock time frame, and all they get, you know, all people do is just call in for a complaint?
Through the chair, that's very possible. Some of the complaints that we do receive that are specific to construction sites are about staging, employees arriving on site, contractors starting not knowing, they may be from other cities, not understanding the start times. So those are all very real possibilities that it could even start before 6, and then we would be battling that.
Okay, so in those situations, what happens? You receive a couple of complaints that a development, the workers on site are starting early. What happens after that?
Through the chair, typically we would reach out to whoever the responsible foreman is on site there and have a conversation with them, explain what the regulations are, and ask them to ensure that they're not doing that moving forward. If they continue, then we would have the possibility to issue a charge.
Okay. And last question, how often do these requests come in? I understand, through COVID, there were some exemptions made by the province, but specifically to Kitchener, in your knowledge, how often does an earlier start time actually come in for a request?
Through the chair, not very often for early starts. Generally, with concrete pours, it's typically once they start in their day, they have to see that through. So it's usually to go past the time. But we haven't had a lot of requests for the early morning start times.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And last councillor in the queue is Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Ms. McNeil, I'm wondering if you can let us know whether or not, if other companies come forward with this in the future, if we would be looking at those on a case-by-case basis and consider each one separately.
Through the chair, I think we would treat any requests coming forward in the future like any other noise request that we receive. We would be putting a report together and bringing it to council, and it would be for council to consider. Whether or not we're setting a precedent, I think we'd have to get a legal opinion on that, but we would be bringing them forward for consideration one at a time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There is no one else in the queue. So I am looking for, I actually have Councillor Michaud I'm looking for direction for a motion.
Yes, for deferral?
If that's your,
Yes.
that's your opinion.
Yeah, I really think that it's important that we get feedback from the community before we make this decision today, to go forward or not. I think they're important. They're the ones that we report to, not the workers, with all due respect, who drive in to do the job. So I'd like to defer this until the client goes out and gauges the community, and we get some information back on where things are at with that.
Okay, thank you. I'll take that. I guess I would just ask, I'm not sure if it's a question of you or clerks, but typically we have a deferral date for like what time it would come back on, and I'm not sure. I guess I'm looking to the clerks. Can we just leave the deferral timing pending the delegates' timing on when they can get this done? Okay, so the suggestion is that that a date be set. I'm not sure if Ms. McCutcheon's still on, but I guess what I would suggest perhaps Councillor Michaud is deferring it to council and then letting the delegate come back with the suggestion on timing at that point. Is that?
I think that's most appropriate, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I will take that then. I still have 3 people in the queue for comment then, beginning with Mayor Vrbanovich. Oh, sorry, you queued out here 1 second. There you go, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess at this point, we're only debating on timing, and so it needs to come back to council anyway, because it will only be dealing with it from a committee perspective. So I'm fine with supporting that. I will say, though, that I guess part of my expectation when it comes back to council with respect to timing is, I think in fairness, any sort of consultation around this probably needs to involve our staff so that it's impartial in some way. Yeah, and I mean, I have some definite views on this, but we're only debating timing right now, so I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that's actually an important point as well. We are looking at timing. I'm sure we're all going to have specific thoughts, but those thoughts will have to come when we're actually making a decision on it or not. So I would remind folks we're supposed to be limited to timing on this, because I do have 3 more people in the queue. Next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I prefer not to defer this. I think, the report is quite clear, and it's not about this property itself. I think it's a much bigger issue that we're dealing with here, and that is the precedent-setting nature of what's being discussed here. So I prefer to vote on this, and as it is today, I've received many messages from residents in this particular site, and yeah, and it goes beyond Wellington and King. I mean, there's also Agnes, and Walter was mentioned as well, but Agnes is a big component of the catchment area here that hasn't even been mentioned by the developer. So I would prefer to see us go ahead and vote on this, and yeah, think of this, as I said, as a bigger picture. It's not just this site. It's, you know, it could be any site. And is this the direction we want to be going?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davey. I think both sides of the issue raises really good points, but I feel like with us being in a bit of a housing crisis and you know, this situation in particular gives me a bit of a pause because, you know, the reality is the train goes by there, and I just want a little bit better understanding. I think it's important that the neighborhood does get buy-in too as well. But if the issue is, if this is something that we continually keep seeing from the development side, then maybe it's our processes that are taking too long, and we should tighten those up further and save time there rather than looking at noise exemptions.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, it's just like everyone else around here, I think have a lot to say about this, but I think we're, you know, focusing on the timing. Apart from ensuring when this comes back to council that adequate time is given to ensure we give residents the opportunity to engage with staff. So I don't know if the referral motion needs to direct staff to be able to report back how they'll work with Vanmar to be able to proceed with the consultation, and as well as that reporting, it should outline the area, how large of an area for consultation would be addressed as well.
Okay, I take by Councillor Michaud is nodding that was her intention in the motion. Very good. Okay. Okay. There's no one else in the queue, so I will take the deferral vote. Remember, if you could just be a little more deliberate in your voting. Those in favor? And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our first discussion item. Where are we here? Okay, and the first discussion item is the gas supply and delivery rates. Mr. St. Louis, when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Okay.
I'm going to give the clerk 1 second to try this, but alternatively, I was going to suggest sit on the seats, but apparently it's all the microphones.
Good afternoon. Chair and members of the committee. Good afternoon.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, folks, just to reset the system.
on our customers. It'll give us better financial planning too, because we're only going to be looking at a quarter of a year at a time, so clearly at a time which is a longer span, so it's going to be or be more accurate, I would say, in our projections based on those short time frames. And those this policy aligns with what the OEP does with other rate-regulated utilities as well as Kingston utilities. So it's what the other utilities have been doing. Now to the gas delivery rate. So as with the supply rate, the delivery rate is based on the weather. And last year we had warmer weather, so we had less revenue than required for this year. So, however, we are able to mitigate some of these costs with our involvement with the Ontario Energy Board, and we're able to mitigate the rate increase that Enbridge is going to pass on to us. So, inflationary increases for this year on the delivery rate are only 2.1%, which is lower than anticipated with this economic conditions. So, what does this mean to our customers? So, the average customer will see a $30 rate increase on supply rate this year, and on the delivery side, $10.30 increase in delivery rate. So recommendations of the report, we want to increase the gas supply effective November 1st, and do quarterly rate adjustments thereafter, delegated by the CFO, those approvals, and then increase the gas delivery by approximately 2.1%. As outlined in the staff report. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. There are 3 people in the queue with questions, beginning with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thanks, Greg, for your presentation. I totally understand why we're always looking at fine-tuning this process. I guess my question is with regards to what is our policy again with purchasing gas rates throughout the year, like our gas consumption? Because I know we had at some point spot rates and everything else. So where's this falling in right now?
Through the chair, we do have a hedging policy, and so we do buy part of our gas in like daily and things like that. We do buy part of it on hedging, and so we have a strategy of 3 years, a certain percentage, 2 years, and 1 year, a percentage that we do to have a blended rate to hopefully get the best value for our customers.
Okay, so historically, I mean, do we have any flexibility for staff to say, like, if gas rates were rather inexpensive from historic views, can we not just simply go beyond the scope of our spot rate and buy more? Or do we still have to, or we just can't because there's no storage capacity, or it's just the types of agreements that we work out with Enbridge?
Through the chair, it's complicated. So we do have storage with Enbridge. So what we are doing right now is we are doing what you're saying, buying as much gas as we possibly can to fill our allotted storage. And so we do that when the price is low. Like right now, the price is low, so we're buying as much gas as we could to put into storage. And then if there's limits on how much we can put in and restrictions on how much you put in, what you can take out, and what volume all that gas is. So we are trying to optimize them to have the best rates for our customers.
Okay, so we're, in essence, it's Enbridge that controls that storage, and we have to follow by theirs, or would it be prudent if we were to build a new facility for further storage?
So Enbridge has a dumping storage facility, and my understanding is one of the largest in North America. We took a tour there last year to see how it actually is stored underground in old gas mines, as you would call them. It's stored in like this huge trunk almost like. And so they have big compression that's stored underground, and it's a multi-million-dollar operation to do so. And we would be able to get that type of volume we need, and the volume that we do have is not enough to provide us enough gas for the entire winter season.
Okay. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Singh?
Oh, I'm so sorry. My apologies. Yeah, you know what, one of the reasons why I kind of became quiet, because Councillor Ioannidis did ask some of the same questions. I'll just stick to my main point. And I like the fact that there would be ability for customers to have the savings when the market plays that part, as opposed to the spot rate changes. It's a sense of accountability where we're delegating authority to staff to change those rates. There are times where looking at the market and just generally the pressures that our residents may be or customers may be experiencing, we buck the trend. We've done it during my time at council. Where's that opportunity from council members at this point if we were to support this?
Through the chair. So, to answer your first question, we do still have a stabilization reserve that can buffer any big spikes within the market. However, through the policy there, council always has the opportunity, if there's something, to bring it back to council with majority of members of council supporting the motion to look into it. Otherwise, during the annual budget process like it is now, we review all the rates at that time.
Okay, all right. Additionally, yeah, anything can be brought back with the majority of council. The rates that you said there would be a change in the delivery and the supply. Can you remind me again? We earn revenue on the delivery, but not on the supply, correct? Because supply is just a follow-through rate. Whatever we're buying the gas, and that's transferred to the customer. That cost, correct?
Through the chair. So we do earn revenue, but profit is only on the delivery side of the business. That's correct.
Okay, and so you're saying there will be a point where we're decreasing a small cost in the supply, but we're increasing the cost in delivery, correct? Can you reiterate that part?
Through the chair. No, so we're increasing the cost of the supply based on the actual physical cost of the natural gas. And so that will be adjusted quarterly. And so that the members of our rate payers will pay whatever the going rate is for natural gas. And then it's a 2.1% increase on the delivery, and that is where your capital programs are, your operating costs are, salaries and wages. And the dividend is on that side of the business.
No, I understand that. So through this direction, we're also increasing the delivery charge as well.
Yes, January 1st, 2025.
And in subsequent increases or changes, it would be delegated staff authority that staff would outline depending on where they want to keep that reserve, if they want to increase or decrease the delivery charge?
Through the chair, no, the delivery is through the annual rates and the budget process.
Okay.
Like today, but only the gas supply will be quarterly because it's really it's a pass-through program and no profits on it and it's closely tied to the rates.
I think you came to answering my question. Supply is a pass-through. That's where you will change quarterly, but the delivery is where we actually make profits, and that's where council would have a say when we set the rates at the end of the year or around this time.
Process, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thanks, Greg. I just want to ask a question about how this would be reflected. When we do our budget, we were able to show, property tax increase, stormwater, sanitary sewer, water utility, gas utility. Would this be able to be shown somehow in our final budget numbers? Like with this new method? Because I guess it's going to be adjusted as we go, not just once as we've done in the past.
Through the chair. So the projection that's provided in the council report, that would be similar as what we get through the budget process. And so this is assuming that the natural gas rate change starting November 1st, but it makes assumptions based on January 1st. We don't know what that rate change will be then. So we provide notification to council that we're going to be making a rate change adjustment. The gas supply, yes or no, because if the price doesn't fluctuate, then we would make that change.
Okay. And Mr. Lautenbach, you wanted to add?
So through the chair, just to add, essentially all of the rate information will still come back to council through the budget process. Typically, we do bring the delivery approval for council to approve ahead of the budget process, and this is similar to what we did last year. The supply rate change, which will happen on a quarterly basis and which is a pass-through cost, will still be outlined through the budget process in terms of what those rates were in the previous year. We'll also have projections through the report, through the budget, to show what we project might be potential rates for the coming year. So you'll still have that information. That's not going to change. And with the quarterly rate changes, there will be an email sent to council when there is a change. That change might not happen every time quarterly. It would depend on what the market is doing in terms of the cost of natural gas, where staff would then make that determination. and let council know what that change would be on the quarterly basis.
Awesome. Okay, that's great to have that transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Councillor Janot.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And let's be honest, whoever thought discussion about gas would be so riveting, you know? But honestly, in the last 2 years, I've learned a lot about, you know, delivery and the charges and how everything is, yeah, it's all there. So my question is, at the end of the day, will people be paying more or less? Like with our reduction of 30% back in the spring it was, and we're increasing it by 13%?
Correct.
Okay, so they'll still be paying less than they would be paying last year?
Have to look at that. Maybe my colleague will be able to assist me on that number.
Second, sure, go ahead.
Through the chair, with the increase in, if we didn't drop the prices in in May, and we kept the price for 30%, yeah, for sure they would be. Now with this increase, they will still be paying less than what was planned for 2024. However, given that the program is a pass-through, moving on for the future, it doesn't matter how many times you change your rate. It's whether you change it once. If you change it once, it will be a bigger spike. If you change it multiple times, it's a smaller spike. The residents it's a pass-through. Whatever we incur as a cost or savings, we pass it directly to the customers.
Right.
So it doesn't matter.
So it can change 2 times a year where they're paying less or they might be paying more. Okay, is that what I'm gathering? You know, because people, at the end of the day, people want to know if they're paying more or if they're paying less.
Through the chair. That it's going to be reflective of the natural gas market. Like I said, it's similar to the stock exchange and how the trading goes there. And so I was just looking at the graph that was in the council report. It looks like back we were just under 14 cents per cubic meter, and it looks like we're recommending 13.3 if my is right on that number. So it's right similar to what we were paying last year.
All right, no, that's perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
if it helps, just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess a better way to think of it maybe is the absolute amounts that people pay might not vary all that much, but you'll see less of changing it 4 times a year versus once. You'll see less of a variation, right? So you'll be less of that rate shock. So that's the real, I think, value to the consumer.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, as we transition away from natural gas, or at least contemplate a transition away from it, how would that affect these rates?
Through the chair. I would say it's too early to tell. We're still working through the low energy transition project. And so based on that, we're going to need to come up with a phase 2 of the project right now. We'll be bringing back a report later on the outcomes of that phase 2.
And is phase 2 an implementation phase, or no?
Through the chair. No, phase 2 is looking at various ideas and options for different scenarios. And so we're looking at like a variety of different options to look at energy transition in different ways, potentially, district energy or other types of forms of energy. And what we do through the gas utility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, I just wanted to make a comment, so whenever that's ready, and I'd be happy to move it.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, my real concern at the point where I don't think I've 100% understood the report was a level of accountability from this council to ensure that the rates that we're setting for the decisions that are within our hands are not, are being delegated, and there's a lessening of accountability to our customers and our residents, but that's not the case. I appreciate that this is a efficiency process, and that's why I'm very, happy to support and move the motion that we will help to ease those volatile markets as the rates go up and down. Again, we do raise them, but we have a reserve, and then there's a certain shock where this allows a incremental changes that softens sometimes those larger increases that happen throughout the year. That being said, there is a increase to the delivery side. And, you know, if you look at inflation right now, I think the report outlines it's a, I believe 2.1% of the utility average rate. That's well in line of inflation. That's would overall, I think, help us to, if you look at the average of whatever we end up setting our tax levy, would help to bring that overall average rate down as well. So in part, this is a great good news story. The rates are not increasing much. The customers will have better efficiencies of their rates that they're paying throughout the year. And at the same time, I think our staff have better management of the rates as they do right now. So all in all, this is a good step forward.
Yeah, there's no one else. Thank you. I'll just echo. I'll support the recommendation as well. I do think it's prudent. I mean, it might not be as relevant to everyone because I know some folks are on equalized billing, so they sort of have those peaks and valleys smoothed out annually anyway. But I think it just makes a lot more sense to be a bit more nimble in our response. And I'm honestly a bit more comfortable. I remember Councillor Anadis reflected on when we dealt with the policy with rate setting a number of years back, and we did get ourselves into some trouble at one point because we were a bit too aggressive in thinking that rates were low when at that point in time they were not. But having said that, looking at the recent years in the chart that was presented earlier, you would notice if you're looking that we've been well under Enbridge for a number of those years, saving our residents some money on the gas rates. So I think it's an appropriate time to move to the quarterly system. And again, there's nothing, as was highlighted, nothing stopping us from pulling it back if we do ever get into any sort of trouble or want to tweak it again. So again, thanks staff for the report. I'll take the vote. Those in favor? Could I just get everyone to sort of quickly vote again? Sorry. Those in favor? And opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, the final item is the expansion of the Belmont Business Improvement Area. And I believe Mr. Bloom is going to be kicking us off, or... No, Mr. Brown? Oh, sorry. There we go. Sorry, Mr. Bloom, go ahead.
No problem. Thank you, Chair Davey and members of committee. I'll provide a bit of context, and then Mr. J.D. Zaire, who's the current president of the Belmont Village BIA, is here, and he'll walk you through a short presentation and answer some questions. So as context for council, business improvement areas, it's a unique tool within the Municipal Act that allows council to create BIAs. They're essentially boards of council, but other than approving their annual budget, and council also approves their board members, ultimately the essence of a BIA is to allow the business community to self-govern themselves. They self-tax themselves, they raise funding through a levy process, and then ultimately govern themselves. As I would describe, it's businesses coming together to build community and figure out how together they can best support improvement within their area. In this case, the Belmont BIA, which is one of our two BIAs, as a board, they have decided that now is a good time to contemplate an expansion to their boundaries. So what's before you today is really the first step of a process that's prescribed in the Municipal Act, which is the beginning of an engagement process, whereby those that would be potentially impacted by the new boundary are given an opportunity to both engage with the BIA, but then also provide feedback to council. So not unlike a planning application, there's, if council supports this today, there's a period at which the clerk's staff administer an engagement process. Council then takes the feedback and ultimately wouldn't make a decision on an expansion likely until January once the engagement process has concluded. However, the one sort of unique piece to BIAs is that through this process, businesses have an ability to outline an objection to the clerk, and if more than 1/3 of the property owners or businesses within the area object, then council actually doesn't get to make a decision. It's considered that the decision is to not proceed. So that's a little bit unique from sort of some of the other public processes that you'd be used to. with that, I'll turn it over to JD, who will walk you through the work that the board has done to date, the rationale for making this request and why consider expansion now, and happy to take questions after.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Zer, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me in. Council Fitzgerald. Thank you, Corey. I just started taking a quick synopsis of the current situation in the BIA, our vision, and I the engagement that we already participated in within the community and our future goals and objectives around that. As you guys are mostly aware, the BIA is very small in terms of its size. In Trading Glassway, it's actually one of the smallest in Canada. It's one of the smallest in Ontario. And with that comes some challenges from a budgetary perspective. Within our current budget today, we're able to host a few events, but instead of that, all the main budget goes towards maintenance. And within other maintenance, snow removal, salting, those are the things that have increased the cost. We actually pull back some of the other stuff, which we've always really liked to do, which is get our events and add some beautification and host more events whenever we can. So we really felt, and it's probably been a long time coming, that it's time for the BIA to look at expanding its borders so we can better, better support the surrounding business area, growing area within the Belmont Village and Catalyst and down Belmont Street generally. There's actually been a lot of outreach from other businesses outside the current borders who said they're definitely interested in participating over the years, and that gives us a lot of encouragement that this will be well received by the surrounding area. Outside of just being the capacity for what we can do within our budget, we also have a working board, which has a challenge as well, meaning anything that we want to do from a BA standpoint has to be done on volunteer time. And we've done all of that, and I'm very proud of the board that we have and what we've accomplished as a group so far. So our vision, as you can see from the slide showing now, is to continue or to expand the borders to Seafood Catalyst, which I believe nationally makes a lot of sense. They have a lot of interest. I've engaged in some of the principles of Catalyst, Frank was to engage and just he's already Jim said we love the idea. We see the natural fit and the natural it's shared vision for the Belmont Village and going up the Glassway there to incorporate the air loss down Park Street into Sheridan Hill and then over to the Rankin where Schneider's is and that trio developed apartment complex there, down Gate Street and then up Belmont. We believe this is a kind of very it's an area that we shares a lot of common vision and goals and will blend really well with the Belmont Village. They all see it very the natural idea that if the Belmont Village continues to thrive and only gets better and more beautiful, that it'll benefit all those businesses around it. And I think by creating kind of a unified vision and a lot of shared branding and beautification within those different areas, it'll really just and create a whole new node within the Kitchener-Waterloo area of a place where beautiful people can walk through. And the anniversary has a natural path for that, for all the people that actually go through that area. So I think it's going to be great term for the area and being able to, as I said, create reason for people to come, beautification, art, and what have you. So I've already kind of briefly spoke to the vision and what we're looking to do there. As you know, we already do host a bunch of events, but Catalyst really sees an idea of being able to use their space to host more events. And I think that's what we're really trying to create that shared vision between the different the businesses and within the Village and new expanding area. One of the things we've already gone through is if you saw commercial media, we've just done a rebrand, changed your logos, and we're really looking new stay in that place and being throughout the middle of new signage that's definitely outdated and need updating. So we're excited about how we can expand that Belmont Village brand across the new borders in the new area and kind of bring that holistic approach to branding and beautification and placement. And as you can see here, this is just some work we've done within some of our marketing and some of the shared vision for the future of how we're going to be branding Belmont Village as a place where you can shop local. And I guess really quickly on the engagement side, we've already hosted one event where we engaged with the current Belmont Village. There's a lot of support there, a lot of great questions, and a really great night. Which overall we seem to see a lot of support for. The next, outside of the independent engagement I've done with Catalyst and other businesses, as just mentioned, I've spoken to the ownership charters and some of the larger property owners on Gay Street who have great questions that I will be working with Corey and the team to get back to them on. But outside of that, we're going to be hosting hopefully 1 or 2 to 3 events. We're going to be having bringing all the different businesses reaching us and asking to come for an information night where we can have kind of a dialogue. And of course, within that kind of invitation, if they can make it, I'm always open to meet with them either by phone or in person for one-on-one meetings to discuss any questions, concerns they may have. So we're definitely trying to approach it as the most open book, honest and transparent practice as possible. And I think with that, we should see a lot of support because I think it does make a lot of sense for the area.
Okay, thank you so much. I might actually get you to sit just over there because we could understand you, but it was just a little bit robotic. Does anyone have questions of Mr. Zaire? I have 4 people in the queue. Yes? Okay. Yeah, just sit in that first seat right there. Perfect. And I will turn you on. There you go. Councillor Johnson for Mr. Zaire.
Thank you, Chair Davey. And thank you, Mr. Zaire, for coming in. And congratulations on a great festival weekend. It was amazing to see thousands of people actually gather in the village this weekend. So kudos to you and your team. My question is pretty simple, and that is, what is in it for the new companies that you're looking to have join the village from a marketing and a experience perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the best answer I can have is kind of a shared, the interesting thing about Gage Street, and we spoke to them, is they said they've liked the idea of trying to create beautification within that area, but said like we never could get everyone together. So using the BIA as kind of a driver for getting those things accomplished and looking at the best interests of the different areas within this new within these new boundaries will really help bring together that shared vision I think everyone has for creating a more desirable, more attractive place for all the different businesses there. Naturally, I think there's Catalyst said very openly, like we take care of a lot of our own beautification within the Catalyst area, but within the Belmont Village, they really love the idea that if the Belmont Village can become and continue to improve and have a lot of more reasons for their employees to go up and spend time there, that's going to make it very easy for them to attract that top talent that they're looking to bring into those innovative businesses that are really make up that area. And then I guess down, when I kind of think about down the Belmont Street generally, they're the ones who've always came to us and said we'd love to participate more within that, be part of the BIA, because they'd like to see all the benefits of what the kind of events that we host within our current borders get spread down that area and allow those businesses to benefit from those experiences as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman for Mr. Zaire. Okay, when you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in. So my first question is, the businesses that are currently within the Belmont Village catchment area, will their levies remain the same, or will they go up as this, as this is advanced?
Well, I would imagine the levies would stay the same. The actual levy amount will be decided as we get once the border is voted upon and through I think that process. But I don't, the one reason this expansion also makes sense is because we don't want to continue to increase the levy of just the current BIA as it stands today, because it's tough for businesses. Obviously, it's tough for all businesses today. So by expanding the borders, it can help lessen the stress, allow us to do more, obviously, without just putting all the burden on the BIA as it stands today between Union and Glasgow. So the levies will not be increased, from my understanding.
And you mentioned the catalyst. Is each individual business that's in the catalyst consulted, or just the owner of the building? And I think also of, there are other areas, like I think, maybe on Gage Street, multiple buildings are owned by the same person, but are each individual business going to be consulted, or have they been consulted?
Yeah, no, they have not been consulted, but yes, the desired approach is, just like we did within the Belmont Village today, we invited the business property owners as well as the businesses. I think it's in their best interest to be fully aware of what the process goes, what this vision is, and how it will benefit them. So the idea would be to reach out to both parties.
Okay.
And sorry, Mr. Bloom, you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, through the chair, just to provide some further clarity. So within the Municipal Act, and as part of the process that Mrs. Fusco's team will lead, there's a requirement. So we will notify the property owners, and they're then required to provide formal notification to all of their tenants. So both informally through the BA, but more importantly, formally through the city. Yes, every tenant would be notified.
Notified.
Yes.
Okay. My other question had to do with well, maybe you don't know the levy amounts, do you? You probably don't know that. It depends on the impact value, how impact values the property. Okay, yeah. So I want to ask that question. My other question, though, had to do with, okay, AirBoss. How would it benefit from being part of this project or this proposal?
Yeah, so I think the idea around, as I said before, kind of rebranding that area and seeing AirBoss being incorporated through the obviously beautification of the area. Obviously, AirBoss is more of a manufacturing business, right? So it's not traditionally one that's looking for retail people to walk by. But over the long-term success of the area, I think as a property owner of that building, I think they will see the benefit of increased property value, increased a general attractiveness of the area. I think will only enhance their makes people happy to come to work, I guess, and they have workers too who will be walking down to Belmont Village to grab lunch once in a while. So I think that idea of making things more beautiful will as both the property owner and a business, will hopefully be attractive to them as well.
So, I'm on the downtown BIA, and they do amazing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the outdoor patios, the flowers, they clear the sidewalks. How, in material things, how would they benefit? You're not going to put flowers outside of AirBoss, and you're not going to plow their driveways, right? Their parking lot.
Yeah, that is true. What we are looking to do is along the streetscape add elements, as in that one slide showed, areas of banners and other things like that are not exactly material to that exact property, but within just driving around the area, they're noticed from that perspective. Obviously, I would hope that we'd be able to recruit someone from AirBoss to join the board. By that way, they have direct impacts on how decisions are being made and what things would generally help their business. Generally help their business from a BIA expenditure standpoint. Maybe they could host some events there. They obviously have a lot of space, a lot of property where they could do different things. So maybe there's art that they could install on the exterior of their building. There's a lot of different ways in which we incorporate that shared vision to all sorts of different businesses.
Is that telling me to stop?
Yeah, your 5 minutes are completed.
Okay,
Actually,
I'll come back.
Thank you. So just on that, actually, we are well over time already for this committee, and I'm still seeing 3 people in the queue. Thank you. So if I could just ask that you keep your comments and questions brief. Next up is Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, JD, for coming in with your presentation. I really think BIAs are really important for communities. And as Belmont Village has grown so much, the surrounding area, I fully support this. I was going to ask the question about the board of directors. I'm assuming that it will grow as well. To your point, it was what was the business that you said would be on the board?
Airboss.
Airboss,
yeah.
yes. So this is how you'll engage, not necessarily retail, but other companies in there, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
the board today, as Councillor Johnson already knows, has been established for a long time, and I know that once this is done, they're maybe not excited, but ready to pass the torch, if you will, and they totally understand that. By doing so, it'll be incorporating all these new businesses into this new board and trying to make sure we have equal and fair representation across this new geographical
Right,
area.
and it's only going to enhance an already perfect Belmont Village. And I will say I'm a little envious of the ward that Councillor Johnson represents, because I wish every ward had a Belmont Village. I think it's just wonderful there, so good work. Thank you.
Agree.
Thank you. Up next is Councillor Stretch.
Thank you, Chair. I guess this was just a point of clarification. So in the engagement process, the community and the businesses where the expansion is taking place is going to be able to say, yes, we'd like to be part of this, or no, they're not. And if they're not interested, it doesn't come back to council, right? Have I understood that correctly?
Through the chair, what the clerk's department will administer is a formal process whereby every property owner and tenant ultimately gets notice. They have the option to send an objection level letter to the clerk, and at the end of the process, the clerk will tally it up. And if that threshold has been passed, like if there's more than 1/3 object, then you're correct. The council wouldn't even have an option to bring a new bylaw to amend the boundary forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Thanks again, JD, for coming in. This sounds pretty exciting to me, especially having Schreiders as part of the BIA, because they are a big part of the downtown Kitchener BIA, so a lot of experience there. And Catalyst 137 has been a great space. House of Friendship, general meeting, Toasty Toes had their Czech celebration there. City of Kitchen even held a musician development forum there. Have you heard anything from them with their desire to maybe hold some BIA events in their indoor space?
Yeah, that's when I spoke to different members at Catalyst, they all voiced the idea of how they can leverage their space to host bigger and better events. Even looking at something like the Festival, being able to incorporate that space makes it just a ton of sense. So they're absolutely on board with that idea and how we can, it would almost make sense to actually put the future BIA headquarters in the Catalyst Center. It would make sense because that's where they have the most space available. So definitely, it's something that I think they're very much aware of and how that shared vision can be created.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Davey. And I guess, sorry, JD, this is more towards staff, because when we look at the expansion, I noticed that there's quite a few, there seems to be some residential development in there as well. So who's going to be specifically levied BIA fees in particular? Is it a property owner for the entire building, or is it, what if it's individually condo?
Mr.
Like
Bloom?
So through the chair, so only commercial tax assessment is levied. So residential, public sector are not levied. And the way it works is it's based on the MPAC assessment. So if your property, if you have a commercial, say it's all residential, but you have a commercial convenience store, there is some level of assessment in your that's valued, and that equates to the fee. Typically, the charge goes to the property owner, and then the property owner determines how they'll pass it down to the tenant to pay. If that makes sense.
Okay. I guess my follow-up with regards to that. So if I understand this correct, if less than 1/3 disagree with this process, then the BIA can get our blessing to move forward with the expansion.
So through the chair, well, if less than 1/3 object, then council can make a decision come January as to whether they want to proceed with the boundary as is. If there was objections and you wanted to shrink the boundary, there's probably within reason you could do that. I think the only thing you couldn't do is expand the boundary beyond what we've already shown, because you wouldn't have notified anybody who would be impacted. So there's still a decision by council to be made come January. Yeah, the point is, if more than 1/3 object, you don't get to make a decision. It sort of dies at that point.
Okay. I know Councillor Chapman's raised this a few times, but the reality is this is an extra levy on all these properties. Do you even have an idea of what the levy may be if this goes through?
So through the chair, so our finance department has done a projection as to what it would equate to. So then the new levy would be approximately 300,000. They have shared with staff what the individual impact to every property owner is. So when we have those engagements, we'll be able to provide them a context as to what the financial impact of the levy would be, so that they can make a determination as to whether it's a meaningful or it's worth the value that the BIA would provide them.
Okay. Anyways, I am supportive of this expansion. I think it's a valuable process and probably needed for some time. But I do have some concerns with the levy, and because even during these times, some of the businesses are really getting hit and hammered, and this is just an extra levy that, you know, it does raise a little bit of concern for me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman.
Can I ask questions of staff now, or are we not there yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the 1/3 business, if we were to work with the boundary the way it's being proposed here, I understand, okay, let me think how to phrase this. Catalyst itself represents 2/3 of the businesses that are being talked about here. Is that not true?
So through the chair, I don't know about the business numbers, but certainly in terms of what the projected levy is, they likely are probably more than a third. They're more than a third of the increased levy.
Right. So therefore, even if 3 or 4 businesses objected to what's being proposed here, it wouldn't matter. The boundary would be set. Is that correct?
Not precisely. The process of the Municipal Act is about what defeats the process. Council ultimately gets to make a decision still in January based on the feedback that you hear. So if Catalyst says they object, then you wouldn't even see the bylaw come forward, because more than a third, they would meet the more than 1/3 threshold. So
But that's Catalyst and each individual tenant, correct?
within Catalyst, yeah, like when we tally it up, if either the assessment value or the number of businesses is over 1/3, then the process stops at that point. So it's more about the stopping of the process. Council still gets to decide. So if the thresholds aren't met, which means council can consider the bylaw, council still has an ability to, if they wanted to make small adjustments to the boundary, that is still, we think within reason of your abilities.
And if I were to say now, can we take off Strange Street, would you suggest that's not the way to approach this right now? I mean, I have reached out to those businesses, and not one of them has an interest in being part of this process. They have not been approached by anybody, and they want to know what's in it for them. So my question is, like, if they're saying no now, is that not put them at risk of being brought in whether they choose to or not? And I think the idea is great. I like the idea of expanding on Gage and Belmont and the Catalyst and Schreider's. So I'm not adverse to this whole idea. But then you get these places way out there that really have no connection to Belmont Village, and I just worry about what that the impact it could have on them.
So through the chair, my recommendation, so this is really about you initiating a democratic process today, and it's about then you ultimately making a decision in January. So By including them, they get the benefit of, they'll get the formal notification, they have the formal ability to object, council will, you'll know who objected and who didn't, and then you get to make a decision in January, and if there's a set of businesses along that street that object and council's rationale is, we think we should exclude them, you always have that ability to do that down the road. So I think really the benefit of including them is allowing them to be part of the engagement process that comes forward. I appreciate you may have discussed with them, but I think the opportunity for them to meet with the BIA, whether that changes their decision or not, I think just allowing them to have that process would be, I think is fair and prudent, and it doesn't bind them into the BIA until, that is ultimately a council decision in January.
Okay, I guess my concern is when we initially talked about this, Corey, you talked about that if they, a letter will go out to them, if they don't respond to that letter, then they're in. Like, maybe it got lost in their mail, maybe they didn't give it much importance. So I really think the engagement process has to be one-on-one and not through a letter, a mailed out letter. Like, because this is they're now being committed. I also worry about AirBoss. I'm not asking a question. Because once it gets developed, I would say, yeah, bring it on, expand that boundary. But that could take 10 years, 15 years, right? So I just wonder if, from north of Catalyst and that whole area, if we're kind of jumping the gun a bit.
So through the chair, so the letter is the prescribed process. What we and the BIA ought to do over and above that is certainly within our purview. I know in conversations with Mr. Zaire, both he and staff will make themselves available one-on-one. He's mentioned that he plans on hosting meetings for the different areas. So certainly, I think our intent is to make sure that everybody is aware. I mean, that's really the principle of what the Municipal Act sets forward, and then allow them to gather the information, make a decision, then decide whether they wish to object or not.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I also want to say that, I learned about this when the report came forward. And a lot of what's being proposed here is in my ward. So I'd like to be integrated into the process starting now, just so that I can be part of those discussions with my constituents, because otherwise, it kind of, they lose that representation as well.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I just want to make sure I'm understanding from Mr. Bloom, but this, you probably should, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably should have heard about it the first time when the report came out, right? Because this is the beginning of the process for the engagement and coming back in January. Is that?
Correct, with the exception of Councillor Johnson, who'd been sitting on, as a board member, would have had awareness. But yes, today really is the start of the process.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Verbanovich.
Actually, just, you know what, I'm prepared, unless Councillor Johnson's going to move it.
I believe Councillor Johnson indicated she'd like to move it. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Johnson, did you want to speak to it? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. This has been a long time in coming. I know that it's something over the last few years that the BIA board has talked about, and various different iterations. Nothing formal, obviously, has happened, but certainly it's something that the BIA board has looked forward to, knowing that for them to move forward from where they currently are, that they do need to grow and that they need to progress. They've got lots of great ideas about some really interesting things that they can be doing if they were a bigger entity. And there's such a strength in, frankly, as Councillor Michaud alluded to, in the brand of Belmont Village and really what it's become. That it's an exciting time for them. I'm really proud of them and the volunteer board. I also want to give a special shout out to Jay Brown, who's here today as well, who worked really closely with the BIA board over the last, I'm going to say 18 months. So really a huge thank you to you, Jay. And I'm very proud to move this motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some comments from Mayor Verbanovich, and then we'll vote.
Yeah, thanks. I will be supporting this. I think for anyone who was at Bestville on the weekend, you had an opportunity to see the kinds of benefits that come where a BIA exists. Many cities have numerous BIAs, and I think the city has a long history of working collaboratively together, certainly with our downtown BIA, and as well with the Belmont one, as small as it has been. This is an opportunity to grow it. We'll see what the potential, what the various impacted properties have to say about it and go forward. I will say respectfully, Mr. Chair, that I do think it was a bit of a miss because this does impact Councillor Chapman's ward. She should have had a heads up on it. And I think we've heard from Mr. Bloom that that will be the case going forward, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's been moved. I would ask those in favor. And opposed? And the motion carries. That concludes Finance and Corporate Services Committee. I know it's an information item, but I would be remiss not to acknowledge the projected variance report that's included in our package. Some great work from staff projecting at this point a $3 million surplus, and some notable surprises in there that I was happy to see with respect to especially parking in the golf enterprise. So great work from staff on that. So we're going to go right into special counsel. Okay, just going to switch over then. So meeting adjourned.